Welcome to the Lincoln Park Sustainable Living Community Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Smith, the Executive Director of Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District, based in the great city of Newark, New Jersey. Thank you all that thought it not robbery to listen to the historical first episode on our new show. Your calls, texts, emails were a morale boost to the entire team at Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District as we expand the organization's message, mission, and vision of community economic development through creative placemaking. My pre-Katrina New Orleans experience was soaked in musical history and culture, and that's where I really was able to get my feet wet and learned how to work on festivals. I was afforded the opportunity to work on the New Orleans Jazz Festival and the first Essence Music Festival that came to New Orleans. Under Mayor Mark Morial and under the helm of Jackie Harris, I had the opportunity to work on music, film, and particularly under a special project called Arts Tourism Partnership under Linwood Sloan. We worked with the Black Tourism Network. It was a city that really celebrated the lives of Black and brown people, and I was able to bring that energy and knowledge back to the city of Newark. It was during this time that I came to deeply appreciate jazz music, which ties directly to our episode's title, Culture Bubbles Up from the Bottom. The phrase, culture bubbles up from the bottom, was first coined by jazz patriarch Ellis Marsalis, who stated in an interview that in other places, culture comes down from on high. In New Orleans, it bubbles from the streets. This always stuck with me. As an arts community development organization founded and led by Black Indigenous people of color since inception, Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District has adopted and interpolated the phrase as one of its mantras. If you want pure and uncut Black history, heritage, and culture, come to the source. Post May 25th, 2020, the day George Floyd was murdered, PWIs became woke to the latest racial and social justice reckoning among Black people around the world. As corporations and funders begin to rethink their DEI strategies and investment in communities of color, it is imperative that we work collectively to close the giving gap between PWI's diversity programs and historically Black Indigenous people of color's organizations and institutions that are led by BIPOC, working to build up and creating in communities of color. I hope you find my conversation with today's guests about their unique perspectives as informative and resourceful as I do. My first guest today is Fayemi Shakur. Fayemi is a writer, interdisciplinary artist, and arts advocate. Since 2020, she has served as Arts and Cultural Director for the City of Newark. She has held appointments as visiting lecturer at Rutgers University, Newark, Department of Art, Culture, and Media, and Arts Advisory Council member for Newark Arts. As a cultural critic and interdisciplinary artist, her writing has been featured in national and international outlets, including the New York Times, Hyperallergenic, CNN Style, Vice, the International Review of African American Art, Nueva Luz Photographic Journal, High Side Magazine, MFON, Women, Photographers, and the African Diaspora, amongst other books and publications. She was selected for several artist residencies in 2019 that included Critical Studies Artists in Residence at the Center of Photography at Woodstock, Artists in Residence at Shine Portrait Studio, and Feminists in Residence at a Project for Empty Space. In 2019, she founded A Womb of Violet, a project-based collective of Black women writers, poets, and interdisciplinary artists. Welcome, my sister, Fayemi Shakur.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining the call today with you.
Well, you know, Fayemi, we've been I met you a long time ago when we were at this in the very early stages of the making of Lincoln Park, and but you have been a
Hmm.
trailblazer in the arts for quite some time, and I'm just so happy to see how both of our careers have just moved in different directions. But it feels so. It just for me, this is full circle. To be able to interview you, and you're a change agent over at the City of Newark, where in a place of arts and culture, and we're still doing what we're doing here at the next iteration of what's happening in Lincoln Park. So it's just so wonderful to be able to just sit and have a chat with you on this podcast. I'm going to go right
Thank
into.
you, Anthony.
You're welcome. Uh, this interview actually is easy for me because we know each other so well, and I just enjoyed just working with you. And we call each other all the time when we need to vet and vent with each other. But I'm going to start with the first question. Fayemi, I've always wondered. You spell your name all lowercase. What's the meaning behind that? It definitely makes you stand out.
Oh, wow. It's been a while since I talked about that, but I when I first changed my name in college, Fayemi Shakur wasn't my birth name, but I changed my name to that name. And I was writing for the Source magazine at the time, and I was reading Black feminist thinkers and poets and writers like Bell Hooks, and one of my most favorite writers at the time, she also didn't capitalize her name. Her name's Dream Hampton, and I got to know her really well. And I was just really inspired by that. For me, it was a way to remind myself to be humble, especially as a published writer. My thinking was no matter where I might see my byline somewhere, you tend to get a little, prideful sometimes, as we should be in moderation, right? But it was just a reminder to stay humble. That's why it's like that.
Wow, wow, that's a great story. And through our careers, we sometimes we see a lot of lights, camera, action, but it's great when you
Hmm.
can just stay grounded and understand
Yes,
it's just
I think it's
showbiz.
important.
Sometimes. Moving on to
Hmm.
question number two, Fahimi, you're a Renaissance woman. Tell me a little bit more about your career journey.
Well, like you said, so much of what I'm doing now, a lot of it did begin with my work with Lincoln Park. Um, but I guess I'd say I'm first a writer and second organizer. I've always had an interest in social justice and activism and art. Um, but really, I think when we all worked together in 2004 for that National Hip Hop Political Convention that we did in Newark,
Yeah, remember that.
that, yes, that was such a powerful time. And just to see like where everyone is now after we had that event. I mean, I met Angela Garrison at that time. She moved on to become, I believe, mayor of Hillside, and all the phenomenal work that she does. I.A. Wilson at the time was a lawyer, and he moved on to become deputy mayor, and working with him and you at Lincoln Park on the festival was like the next leg of that journey. But I learned so much working at Lincoln Park because working with you, who also used to work with the city, I learned a lot about just the importance of collaboration and partnership. When we first started the festival, Brian tried to tell me we had a budget of $14,000 for a 2-day festival. And I was like, how? How, Brian?
I know.
How we going to do that? And then he said, I'm going to bring my brother Anthony in, and he'll help us out. And just watching the way that you worked, and it was all about relationships. and so much could be garnered from just in-kind support and collaboration. What one person might not have in their organization, another organization or partner could step up and say, oh, well, we could sponsor and give you some airplane tickets for your artists to come, or we don't mind volunteering our, limousine to come, and building out the vendor marketplace and the sustainability marketplace. It was just a beautiful experience and a learning opportunity for me, a valuable learning experience.
Yeah, that was a lot of. When I look back, sometimes you're moving so fast, you don't get a chance to reflect. And when I think about my memories around the National Hip Hop Political Convention, that was a big deal, right? So
Yes, it was.
we came into a city uh, looking to make a change in which the culture or the hip hop culture, people were afraid. And they were making us jump a lot of hurdles, but we were
Mm-hmm.
tenacious and kept moving through. And the one thing that really struck me, particularly when you were working on all of the workshops, and I think you and Angela were working on all the workshops, and it was in all of NJIT, Essex County, and Rutgers, and everything. I really,
Mm-hmm.
really, in understanding the nature of hip hop, because I learned it through you guys, and understanding just all the isms that exist there. It was interesting how what bubbled up out of there was uh, the women who were a part of their voice, and the voice of women really bubbled up in that space, and you had your own caucus going on around that, and I thought that was really, really special. That stayed with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did over 30 issue-based workshops. And I don't know if you remember the intergenerational town hall that we had, but that was such a powerful day.
Yeah, it certainly was. Um, when you think about it, though, Fahimi, how much has changed in the space when women and in the world of hip hop and just music and arts? What do you think has changed or has much changed in reference to um, women versus men and the whole sexuality and all the isms that exist in it? Do you think much has changed? Because we did this a long time ago, and we were talking about back then in 2004. So we're talking about almost 16 years ago.
Hmm. Well, as an industry, I think the industry has the same problems in society, period, with women in terms of just sexism and patriarchy and, violence against women and issues of equal pay. Um, but I do feel like um, women are definitely learning ways to support each other better
Mm-hmm.
and, redefining what feminism means, particularly for Black women and women of color. And I think that that's important. I think feminism has always been around as far in the Black community before we even had a name for it.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you care about women, then and justice for women and fair treatment of women, then we still have a little bit of education to do with our younger generation, so that they know there's nothing to fear. Sometimes men still ask questions about it as if it's a competition between men and women, or that you hate men or something like that. And, it has nothing to do with that. I'm like, but the dialogue, the continued dialogue is important.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know what? That really leads up to tell me about A Womb of Violet, the anthology, and what's next for that collective that you created.
Well, A Room of Violet started during my Feminist in Residence at Project for Empty Space, which is a community gallery here in Newark, run by two powerhouse art leaders here in the city, Jasmine Wahi and Rebecca Jampol. And at the time, I hadn't received a residency before. I had applied and failed and been rejected for so many opportunities. And I had been writing independently, writing short stories, and I had all of these ideas, and I just took a chance and submitted to their open call. And once I was in the residency, they told me about this machine they had called a risograph machine, which looks like a color copier,
Mm-hmm.
but it functions more like a screen printer. And so you can print one color, one layer of a color at a time. And they told me they had the capacity at the gallery to make art books if we wanted to make books. And once they told me that, it completely inspired me to think of a new way to consider my project. And instead of just focusing on highlighting my own work, I started thinking about other Newark women artists, Black women artists, who contribute so much to the community. They serve on boards, they serve as teaching artists, they volunteer, they serve their community in so many ways. But I wanted to celebrate their own individual work as artists.
Wow.
And so I reached out to about a dozen or so women and asked them if they would want to submit to this project. I had written a series of poems that were important to me, and we had, a general theme and framework for the content, that it would be about sisterhood or womanhood or motherhood or race, safety, any issues and tributes that they wanted to pay to other Black women feminist writers and thinkers. And as I was in the gallery for the residency, I started putting up quotes that inspired me by people like Ntozake Shange and Andre Lord and Toni Morrison and the Combahee River Collective. And I don't know, it was just such a deeply moving experience. And I don't know, we just went on to do some other great projects together. And we went to Martha's Vineyard and presented. We did a huge 10-story mural on Halsey Street together. And I'm looking forward to doing another second volume of that book with invite some other artists to join, see,
That's great.
the
That sounds.
beautiful memories you can create.
Yeah, I love the mural of. Is it Brower? The big mural that's.
Yes,
I can't think of her first name. Brower. Uh,
yes, Miss Gladys
this.
Blackwood Grauer.
Yes, that mural is so impactful. I really like that. I really like that. You know, as we're talking about the womb of Violet, it makes me think about how Black culture moves culture. Today, we're really focusing on the power of Black culture, how it moves multi-billion dollars of industries and disparities between the reinvestment back into the Black communities from fashion, film, television, streaming, sports, products, and arts. The Black aesthetic sells, as we know. For example, in Marketing Dive's article, Why Brands Are Doubling Down on Hip Hop Talent, the author states that ever since Sprite's groundbreaking Obey Your Thirst campaign launched in 1994, hip hop and marketing have been a potent pairing due to the factor critical to hip hop and is increasingly important in the marketing and its authenticity. So, as a creator of color, and a journalist, you know that Black culture drives products, right?
Mm-hmm.
It clicks, it listens, it sells, everything. What have you seen from your international purview as a journalist when with your finger on this pulse and it's changing and this changing, environment that's happening, or will it change?
I think artists are more educated now, and they've learned a lot from folks like Prince about the importance of owning your masters and understanding their recording contracts, and also not relying too heavily on one source of income. And, they're entrepreneurs and influencers in society. They can influence politics. They, influence generations of all ages. And I think that's powerful. But in this climate of Black Lives Matter, I think artists are more cognizant, or should be, about how corporations use them and benefit and profit. And if they truly value our culture, I think the call should be now for more investment in our communities and in their own corporations, making sure that they're diverse and inclusive.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Fahimi. Our culture, everyone loves our culture, but we're not getting a lot, there's not a lot of reinvestment back into our community a lot of times. Last week we were talking about the twin pandemics, right? The city of Newark really stepped up to help artists and arts organizations like Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District. We are proud to be a recipient and getting the support from the Creative Catalyst. What's the long-term vision of supporting artists and organizations here in Newark?
hmm Well, I have to give a lot of credit to Jeremy Johnson and North Arts, because when they um, developed the cultural plan, North Creates, it really gave us, or the city, a framework to really use to implement clear goals, which were around a few things that included coordination, yes, but also sustainability of art spaces and our arts groups, and also more coordination, which basically to me means more advocacy, not just in our own city, but statewide. So the Creative Catalyst Fund, the mayor intends for that to be a 3-year, multi-year fund. So it will be available again next year. Up to $1 million will be awarded to small to mid-size arts groups and individual artists. And the idea behind focusing on the small to mid-size organizations is we have so many that don't receive any of the larger grants from organizations like the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and Dodge. And we have a somewhat limited funding pool, and especially for general operating support. And we've already lost a few institutions, important art institutions in our city, which I worked at both of them, Algira and City Without Walls.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
And
Yeah.
and so that became a passion of mine, to make sure that we're advocating for general operating support for our cultural organizations. We can't just brand the city as a city of arts and we're not supporting them. And so, leading by example, the city provided the seed money to help us to be able to do that. And then I was able, to just have deep conversations with funders across the state about why we need more support.
Yeah, find me. I was just sitting here with this rock in my head because I know, right?
Yes,
it's
I did.
it's we can produce, but we have to sustain ourselves. And so there has to be a balance in giving and also monies that's just focused on delivering a project or something of that sort. As we believe, I agree that because culture bubbles up from the bottom to the top, we have to invest in those organizations that have their boots to the ground. And I see that happened with the Creative Catalyst Fund. So bravo to Jeremy and bravo to you. I just think it's very important. The other thing that you said that really was important to me is advocacy. I talk to Jeremy about this all the time, that the artists and arts needs to kind of come together to advocate for some policy changes. You know, there's a lot that needs to happen, and it's not just about when you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just food, clothing, and shelter. We want to elevate ourselves because being an artist is a profession. It's a creative economy, and we want to really be able to sustain our lives, sustain our family, and still contribute to, and in a place where where we're passionate about and that we can earn money from, you know, to sustain ourselves. So that's very near and dear to my heart. Unrestricted money is very important. You know, I mean, actually, you know, I did a newsletter, I think a week or so ago, about supporting Black, Indigenous people of color in leadership. And, you know, there's three different types of money there is that I see that we need. There is operating dollars, multiple year grants, and patient capital. You know, sometimes you got to be patient because it takes time to develop products and things or programs that that we're trying to do. And also, what I think we need to have, we should start thinking about universal basic income for the arts. You know, I know that's going to, you know what I mean? Finally, like, if we talk about universal income, the arts, the creatives need to be a part of that conversation and dialogue also. So I just need to say
Well,
that.
we're so fortunate because I love it. I think we're really fortunate to have a mayor who's also an artist because he gets it.
Yes, absolutely.
And so when he's advocating for universal basic income for Newark residents, that includes artists.
Very good.
And
yeah, very, very good. But you know, as you know, because I also I'm on a WIB board, Workforce Investment Board, and when we would talk about post-pandemic and what was happening, I didn't see a lot of conversations around creatives, and that was disparaging to me. And so I'm glad to hear that, knowing that our mayor is an artist and come from a rich history of arts and culture, that he gets it. Lastly, I just wanted to I stated in your introduction that you lead the Office of Arts and Culture in the City of Newark. Is there a revamped mission and vision under your leadership that's taking place now?
yes, and I'm learning as I go. 'Cause well, we're in a pandemic, so a lot of the things that I thought I would be able to do, just I couldn't do this year, and I had to respond to, first and foremost, just the needs of our arts and culture sector, and to make sure I was getting the word out across the state, so that as budgets are being prepared, that they remember Newark. And we are, I think there was a study that was done that said we are the seventh most vibrant cultural community or cultural city in the nation.
You're right. I remember Jeremy showing that. Yeah, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually a really important and respected study that's done by SMU,
Oh, SMU.
Southern
Okay.
Methodist University, and it's profound. It's meaningful, and not just that, but the fact that Jeremy and I are always telling people, that our sector contributes $178 million to our economy, and so I'm learning how to speak a different language sometimes, because I saw so much funding going out, support, as it should have, for small businesses. And I had to kind of remind people that artists and creatives are small business owners as well.
That's right. Entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and small business. You're right.
And not everybody is a nonprofit. Many have LLCs.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see across the state, we're expanding, trying to expand, these old funding models to really see how we can support the sector better.
Yeah, well, I'm on your team with that. So any support you need in that, I'm definitely there because there's been a paradigm shift on how we're doing things, and there should be a paradigm shift on how they look at us as artists, producers of art, presenters of art, and it's not a cookie cutter. You can't take a cookie cut. It's not a cookie cutter way of looking at it. Everyone is an individual kind of experience, and you have to really kind of lean in and understand that when you're, especially, I'm going to speak from coming from an urban environment, it's the whole, it's a whole different experience and a whole different way in how we approach things, and we can't be measured across the board like one stroke across the board. It needs to be. We need to take into account, what's happening, place, and all those different things. I just wanted to say, it sounded like you were going to say something before I say something. Go ahead. I heard you take a breath.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say well, I was just gonna tell you we're lucky because we actually have some really great thought partners around us,
Yeah.
like Sharnita Johnson at Dodge,
Yeah.
who listens, and shares that information with others, in the funding community. And also, even in City Hall, we have, policy advisors like Shoshana Page
Mm-hmm.
and, our philanthropic liaison, Kevin Callahan. And me personally, I have the benefit of working with a pro bono consulting group from Bloomberg Philanthropies, a special art and culture team that, helped me think about these issues and how to best communicate them. So I'm really grateful I don't have to do this work alone. And this position that I'm in is functioning a little differently in my approach to advocacy and just working more collaboratively, and just expanding it, but also still staying true to that original goal of expanding the arts throughout the city's neighborhoods and all of its wards, and not just focusing everything on downtown.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, you have some great supporting partners there. That's going to make a great impact here in the city of Newark. I'm excited about that. If you were to give us your last words of encouragement to the arts community here in Newark, can you just leave us with something that you want to leave our community with? Some choice words, encouragement.
I, I guess I would say that joy is resistance. This work is hard, um, especially during a pandemic. Sometimes arts and culture, it's not the top priority when there are other pressing issues that include, public health concerns. And we're not out of the woods yet. And I just really want folks to stay encouraged, stay engaged, work collaboratively, and ask for support when you need it.
Yeah. Wow. So thank you um, for just taking time out to just be on the show, and also, I forgot. Find me. Wait, I forgot. Thank you for doing this time for completing the 2 Black Lives Matter street murals. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
that was hot, right?
It was hot. I forgot all about that. I was like, it was happening at a time. I saw it happen in D.C. And then when we jumped right in because we are D.C., Detroit, Newark, I was like, all right, that's hot. And and also they came before Columbus, I would say, and I thought that was an important statement when graciously we took down the statue because it just didn't represent what we represented here in the city of Newark.
And we're going to replace it with something beautiful. But, our Black Lives Matter murals, that whole process, I think I saw Kim Ford out there too that day.
Yeah, she was out there.
She came through the paint with us.
Yeah.
And it was a really beautiful day. And that's really what I mean about creating space for joy, even in times of darkness. within our own community, we uplift and affirm each other's lives.
Wow.
And that's what that day was all about.
Yeah, it's so, and I'm on Facebook and social media, and people still go by there taking pictures. I've seen people doing yoga on the street,
Hmm.
on it. So it just has this. It's so powerful, and also you said all Black lives matter.
All of them, our
All
trans
of them.
community, Black women, all of them, and we have to talk to people that way
Yeah,
because we don't want trans lives to fall off the radar.
yeah,
And it's a challenging conversation for our Black community,
yeah,
but I feel like we're making progress.
yeah. So I have so many questions for you, but I want to leave with two things. One, when will the I have to ask this question. When will the next round of funds be available, or the applications will be available for people to apply? When would it
My
open up?
goal is to have them available my goal is to have it available in the spring,
Hmm.
but you'll be the first to know, Anthony. I'm
Thank you.
so excited. I'm glad that we're going to be able to do it, and yes, hopefully in the spring,
Okay,
around March, April.
good, good, good. And lastly, I keep saying lastly, but how would someone get in touch with you if they're trying to reach out to you, want to have more conversations around the arts, or just, I didn't even go into on Lower Clinton Hill, the arts housing that you're doing so much. Like, how can someone really, if they want to get in touch with you to learn all of the wonderful projects that you're leading and you're spearheading on behalf of the mayor here in the city of Newark?
They can always email me. Folks are in every single one of my inboxes. They hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, text message. They in all my DMs, and it's okay. But my preferred method of communication is my work email, which is Shakur Shakur F like flower at ci.newark.nj.us. But if they want to look for me on social media and send me a little message or add me and follow me there, I'm open to that too.
Great, great, great. Well, you know what? Thank you so much, Fayemi. This meant a lot to me to be able to just have this kind of conversation with you. I call you, I text you all the time, and you're like, okay, Anthony, what's up? But it's nice
On a
to on a
Sunday, on
Sunday. I don't care what
a
time it
Saturday.
is. It doesn't matter. I'm like, hey, what you doing? I need to talk. But
Okay, I
yeah,
love you.
I love you also, and thank you for taking the time out to be part of what we're doing to amplify our voice in the arts here in the city of Newark. Have a great day.
Thank you, Anthony.
Love you.
You too, Anthony.
Take care.
Love you too.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
That was a great interview with my friend, my sister, Fayemi Shakur. She left us with three thoughts that I have to wrap up just one more time with the audience. One, the second round of the $1 million Creative Catalyst Fund will be available in the spring of 2021. And when she shares it, we're going to share it with everyone because she's looking out for all of us. The second is that the city's Office of Arts and Culture under Fayemi Shakur is all about collaboration. Collaboration, collaboration. Last week we said relationships, collaboration, it all goes together. And third point that she made that I just thought was so powerful, joy is resistance. In these turbulent times, just remember, joy is resistance. My second guest, Sharnita C. Johnson, is the program director for arts for the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. Sharnita directs the foundation's arts grants, which foster a diverse and vibrant arts ecosystem and creates a broad-based public support for arts and supports communities engaged in creative placemaking in New Jersey. Prior to joining Dodge, Sharnita managed a $25 million grant-making portfolio in education, health, and family economic security at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation in Michigan. Sharnita holds a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Michigan Dearborn and a Bachelor of Arts from Marygrove College in Detroit. Welcome to Lincoln Park Sustainable Living Community Podcast. My friend, Sharnita Johnson.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah. I'm so glad, Sharnita, that we get this opportunity to chat. You know, when you first came to town, I was like, I fell in love with this lady. Coming from Detroit, you understood who we were in Newark because we're like sister cities. You understood the struggle. You understood the joy. You were the perfect person to fill the position that you filled there at the Dodge Foundation. You know, can you give
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. A brief overview of your background and your career journey. Can you just give me a brief overview of your background and career journey and your passions? Tell us more about yourself. Who is Sharnita? And also, particularly, why Newark? What made you choose to go from Detroit, which is, I guess we would call it the Midwest, right? And then coming all the way over to the East Coast to Newark.
Yes, Midwest.
Yeah. Yeah, why Newark? This area here, you know?
So I'll start by just saying, which I have said many times before, because I've been at Dodge now for 5 years, which went really, really fast, actually. Newark is like my spirit animal. I remember sort of my first week on the job, and I think one of the first days the mayor was doing a city town hall, and when I drove into Newark, there was just the energy that just felt so familiar. It just felt so much like home, like Detroit. And I didn't know that much about Newark really. I had been coming back and forth to the East Coast, going to New York. I lived and worked in New York for a summer in undergrad, but really hadn't spent that much time in New Jersey. And then later sort of understanding the parallels between Detroit and Newark, so much so that we actually put together a delegation in 2015 with Mayor Baraka and about 10 of his cabinet members, philanthropy leaders from New Jersey, and we went to Detroit for 2 or 3 days and really got on the ground. Also, we met with Mayor Duggan and his cabinet, and we went into Detroit neighborhoods because, as I said, I found that there were so many similarities and so much of what I believe Mayor Baraka wanted to accomplish, Detroit was, starting to do or have been doing. And I will say that Detroit learned a lot. I think Newark learned a lot. I think the youth employment work that was happening in Newark was very much influenced by, some learnings in Detroit. But also, conversely, Detroit learned a lot from the Newark youth employment work, which was really, really robust. I know that the mayor was really just getting off the ground with the Centers of Hope. There were some similar examples around some community work that was happening in Detroit. And I'm happy to say that there has been continued back and forth. I know that Detroit came to Newark to learn about the Universal ID program that Newark has in place. There was some conversation around developing the land bank. So, again, just a lot of synergy, a lot of history. Detroit, a lot of folks came up from the South through the Great Migration, my grandparents. Same thing happened in Newark. So, as I said, it was just a lot of similarities. And really, in the statewide. I work statewide. I have grantees all over New Jersey, and a lot of similarities there. I mean, Michigan is more rural than it is urban. It has really important urban centers. Is an agriculture state, so it was an easy transition. It was a very easy transition. But to get back to sort of my career trajectory, which was another one of your questions, I started my early career actually in the for-profit sector in advertising business at Campbell Ewald, which was one of the largest advertising agencies in the Midwest. And that really came after a year of unemployment after undergrad graduation, because I majored in English, minored in history, and I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to be a writer, a journalist. I didn't want to be a novelist. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. But what I knew is I loved reading. I had wonderful, fabulous professors. I'd always been sort of a history buff. And so, as I said, that was like a year of unemployment after graduation until I kind of figured things out. And I landed this part-time temporary job with this advertising agency. They had a publishing arm, and they published magazines that were sort of automotive focused. So everything you could do in a car, drive cross country, just a lot of stories that were sort of car focused. And I was a receptionist, actually. And so anytime one of the editors would walk past my desk, I'd say, "Did you know I was an English major? I could write. Did you know I was a writer? Do you have anything I could write? Can I write something for you?" And so that really started with me writing photo captions for the magazines and some long form articles. And then by the time I left, I actually had a regular column in one of the magazines, and I had advanced to editorial assistant job, which is what I really should have been hired in as, but that's a whole nother story. But then it was connected to the auto industry, and as you know, the auto industry has its ups and has its downs. So I was laid off in a downturn economy, and again, unemployed, had to try to figure out what I was going to do next. And I actually saw a position at the Museum of African American History in Detroit in the paper. That was at the time when, you looked in the paper to get a job. So I applied, and the woman who hired me became, and is still, a very, very good friend and mentor to me. And so we were in the museum that was going to become the large museum. So, and at the time, was the largest African American museum in the country until the museum in DC was built. So spent time there, learned a lot, really had a transformational moment there when it became really clear to me that I was given opportunity and that it was my responsibility to use my voice and my position and any kind of influence or power that I had to bring resources to my community. And then that led me to a series of other fundraising positions. And even though I had been a fundraiser for a number of years, I never really saw any people who looked like me on the philanthropy side. So it just really literally never occurred to me that a Black person could be in philanthropy.
Wow.
Because I never saw in Detroit, in a city, a city that's almost 90% African American, until I did. And that was actually one of my mentors, Carol Goss, who became the president of the Skillman Foundation, who really sort of started to mentor me early in my career. And then I eventually did go to work at the foundation. but and the foundation was at the time extremely diverse. Carol was the president, the vice president. Tanya Allen was a Black woman. The treasurer, CFO and treasurer was a Black woman Andrea Cole, who runs a foundation in Detroit. My direct boss was a Latino man. The program staff was very diverse. It was sort of this microcosm in a lot of ways, but was at that time particularly uncommon. But still, leadership of philanthropy, there's still only about 2% people of color who actually lead foundations. So that was a really important sort of time in my life and career. And I've been really lucky. I've had tremendous opportunity to work at a number of different types of foundations, which is really unusual. I was actually the first program officer for the Ruth Mott Foundation in Flint, which is another place that holds a very important and dear place in my heart. And then wanted to come to Jersey because I had this opportunity to get back into arts grant making, which I hadn't done for a while, and Kellogg doesn't fund the arts per se. And I wasn't, really looking to make a change, and certainly not a big change to move sort of away from Detroit. But this opportunity to have this statewide arts portfolio was so enticing. And it was a long shot as far as I was concerned, but it worked out.
That's great. That's great. Last week, about a week or so, I talked about that in my editorial that I published online last week, I think it was, about how important it is to develop Black, Indigenous people of color in leadership, women of color, just people of color in leadership, whether it's philanthropy or it's at nonprofits. The two go hand in hand. And it's such and in this time that we're going through, it becomes really important that authentically everyone leans in to create these partnerships and these collaborations, with mostly these partnerships that are really rooted in those who really have their boots on the ground on the nonprofit side, and so what do you think about that?
Well, I will say too, I completely agree with you. And so a couple of things. As I said, I've been very fortunate. I've worked very hard, obviously, and thought that it was really important that, as I said, I use any kind of influence or power that I have to tell these stories, to put resources in places where they might not typically be. But what I do know is that there are so many talented people of color who don't get opportunities for a myriad of reasons. And I like to refer to building movements. They've had 2 reports now, Race to Lead, and they really talk about how, we talk about there's this pipeline problem. There is not a pipeline problem. And you know this, Anthony, and I know this, and lots of people know this, that there are many talented people who can do these jobs and do them well. It is a hiring problem. And that's what we really have to investigate, how come folks don't get these opportunities? I often say we all need a coach, we need a mentor, and we need a sponsor. Sometimes we need a sponsor to put us in the room or put our name in the mouth of people. And so that is something that's very important to me. That's something that I do in my career. Often, I try to make sure that I can, if somebody asks me to mentor them, I say yes. I might not be the best mentor. I might not call you enough, or I might not email you enough, but I'm here for you. Because particularly in philanthropy, I try to make sure it's not an easy business sometimes for people of color for a lot of reasons. But I think it's so important. I've had, as I said, a tremendous opportunity to work for powerful Black women. The president of the Kellogg Foundation, LaJune Montgomery Tabron, is from Detroit. She's just an inspiration every day. The president at the Skillman Foundation now, Tanya Allen, has been definitely a mentor to me. And, you know, it's a small group. It's a growing group of women and men particularly. But I think, you know, it's my job to get as many people in philanthropy and to help keep them there, people of color for sure.
Wow. You know what? And for those who are listening, the first day I met her, this is exactly how you were talking. So, you know, there's nothing changed, you know, and now hearing the backdrop to how you got where you are, I can see it just was something natural because there were people there that helped you and you're just passing it forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You know, I have for those who are unfamiliar, what is the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation? In simplest terms, who is Geraldine R. Dodge? And how do you use your power in that position to leverage the playing field?
So the foundation is about 45 years old, 46 years old, and was founded as Geraldine Rockefeller Dodge. So Mrs. Dodge was a Rockefeller. Her and her husband built their life here in New Jersey, and upon her passing with no heirs, her estate rolled into the foundation. The foundation has had 4 presidents over its lifetime so far, and has supported a myriad of programs and program areas. And right now, we focus on the environment, education, which is mostly around arts education, informed communities, which is really about sort of community-informed journalism, storytelling, community engagement, the arts, which is a program that I direct. And we also have a poetry festival, which we typically have in Newark. This month, actually, the poetry festival will launch later this month. And it's every other year, so hopefully the next festival will again be in person. But please check out the website and get information about the poetry festival.
So it's going to happen virtually?
Yes, it will be a virtual festival, and we have a huge engagement by students and educators, and that's still going to happen. Registration is open now for the festival, so I will encourage people to go to the Dodge Foundation website. And so we've been working in these particular program areas for a number of years. I believe the foundation has supported the arts from the very beginning. But a number of years ago, we really started to think about where our resources were going and where we having the most impact. And that led us to doing a lot of sort of research and internal sort of planning and processing. And, you know, the research indicated, which I believe we all sort of anecdotally know across this whole country, that across any quality of life indicator, communities of color, particularly Black and Latinx, have the worst outcomes. And that's the case in New Jersey across health indicators, across economic indicators, housing. The wealth gap in New Jersey between Black, Latinx, and white families is huge. I think the net household wealth of a Black family in New Jersey is $5,500. So when you really look at those college going, high school graduation, all of those rates in these communities of color are very low in some cases. And so we really started to investigate, well, where are Dodge resources going? And if the indication is that these communities of color actually need the most support, how do we get there? And it was a board staff process, and it's really been a process over the last 4 years. We had to learn about structural racism. We had to learn about unconscious bias. We had to do our work as a staff and as a board. And it wasn't easy, and we're still on a journey. But what it did do is shift the foundation's strategic plan to focus on the most underrepresented, under-resourced communities, to actually move the majority of our resources into those communities over time. And we want to focus on getting resources into the hands of people of color-led organizations, as well as organizations that are serving in an intentional and authentic way communities of color. And now really sparked in large part by the protest, by the murder of George Floyd, around sort of this period in time where we had to make some really important decisions. The foundation has even further committed to becoming an anti-racist organization.
Wow. That's huge.
Yes. Yes, very much so. And it's very, very different than when I joined the foundation 5 years ago. To get to this place, absolutely. We went slow to go fast. And again, still have a lot to learn. We'll make mistakes along the way, but I'm appreciative that the foundation was, willing to take this on, and has taken it on in a very serious way.
Well, that's that's what we're talking about today. First of all, I want to say is that I had no idea about Geraldine, Rockefeller, and Dodge and their ties to New Jersey. And when I think about COVID, especially disproportionately how it affected people of color and blacks in New Jersey, I read a lot about. Well, I can't even say this. Let me just reframe this. I want to thank you for your organization, how you leaned in quickly when it came to COVID relief efforts and funding. And I really appreciate, just stepping up, because we were all like in a panic mode. And I reached out and just said, hold on.
And so were we.
I was like, oh, God, what's happening here? And you just said, hold on, just hold your horses, and you came right through. So Lincoln Park, and I'm sure others who you supported, really appreciate how you guys leaned in to support us in a time that was really uncharted waters, and we didn't know what was going to happen.
Absolutely, and I'm particularly grateful to the trustees of the foundation and the president, Tanuja Daney, who really took this really seriously, really thought about how we can make impact, and really supported us in identifying the places and the organizations that were hardest hit, and that we were able to get resources out really quickly, not a lot of strings attached, to just get these dollars on the ground to help as many communities as we could.
Well, we appreciate it. It really came in a time of need. But, I remember early on when you guys were, your organization was taking time out to really do some strategy and thinking. You didn't say what it was going to be about, but, now that you've shared that, what are some of the initiatives that specifically around the anti-racism?
So we are actually, and as I said, we sort of doubled down on that work. We had made this commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. Mm-hmm. We created new theories of change for our program areas where we're methodically moving these resources, and identifying organizations. We totally admit that we don't even know all of the organizations, and particularly the Black and Latinx or people of color-led organizations that are doing work throughout the state. And so, this is the time, pre-COVID, this is the time we had planned to really be on the ground and get out there in the community, although we're very much a community-based foundation, mm-hmm. but to, kind of get a deeper sense of what was going on and who was out there, who was leading. And so moving into this anti-racism work is another step for us, another layer. And I'll say we're probably better prepared than we might have been had we not been doing this other work
Mm-hmm.
over the last few years as a staff and as a board. And we don't really even know what that looks like at this moment. You know, we're working with some very skilled, thoughtful people. We've had great consultants to help guide us and lead us. And that's the place where we are now, just going into deeper learning.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know what that's going to look like at the end, but I again, not thinking that the foundation will get here so quickly, and we're just embracing it and going for it.
Well, that's great. I would like to say that we need more funders like Dodge to be active beyond the hashtag, Black Lives Matter, or let me say Black Lives Matter, beyond the hashtag of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We really need more foundations to lean in, like you're talking about, in the wake of what happened with George Floyd and the flurry around the Black Lives Matter messaging and pledges to do better. We need organizations like yours and others to think about closing the giving gap. I was talking to Fayemi earlier about this, we were talking about funding, general operating funding, multiple year funding, and also patient capital, and understanding that partnerships really are going to require investments, and it's not a one-off, it's a long-term investment that takes place with these relationships, because we have to do it for the long haul. So, and also between the PWI's diversity program, and historically, Black Indigenous people organizations and institutes that have that Black Indigenous people of color who have been leading these organizations and having relationships, it helps us to build up and become more sustainable and really reach our goals and our mission and our goals in our community. So it's just this is a great time. To me, this is a great time. COVID is a travesty throughout the whole world, particularly in the United States. But the time of reflection is as this is the time we all can pivot and shift and change and make a difference.
Absolutely. And I think, Dodge particularly has, we have been for many years implementing best practices. Most of our grants, and particularly in the arts portfolio, are general operating.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not putting strings on those dollars wherever you need it. Dodge has a decades-old technical assistance program where we're helping develop nonprofit boards and to make nonprofits stronger. The gap in funding, and particularly BIPOC organizations in the arts, the Helicon Collaborative has several reports that I believe it's 80% of the dollars go to 2% of organizations, and they tend to be the larger mainstream Western European focused organizations. So we have a long way to go. And I will say, every generation has to deal with the issues of their time. And so philanthropy, this is maybe the third go round around philanthropy and diversity, equity, inclusion. And every time it comes up, the issues, the fundamental issues, the issues of inequality and disparity around funding, et cetera, those things are remaining, but we are continuing to learn. And I will just say, just from my perspective, the BIPOC-led organizations now are very different. They're more plentiful, and they're certainly working on different things than the last generation. Mm-hmm. So the sort of the contemporary idea of what people, and I'm just going to speak for the arts, what people think the arts are, how they want to engage in the arts. I was talking to a Newark-based organization, And they said, in this neighborhood, food is culture, food is art. So we have to think about that.
Yeah.
Art is not always necessarily, and we're learning, sort of the difficulty in this now, that it's not always going to a venue and buying a ticket. Sometimes it's the Lincoln Park Music Festival.
That's right.
That is in your neighborhood that you can walk to, that you don't have to pay for, but you should donate to.
Absolutely.
To experience the arts. So, and it's all of those things. It's an ecosystem. It is sometimes getting dressed up and going to a venue. And post-COVID, I'm hopeful that this is going to happen again. Because I like to put on heels and some makeup sometimes and go to a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. But again, just really thinking about, I know that the arts have kept so many of us encouraged. I don't think, it's probably not a day that I haven't had some music going, or, I'm reading books like crazy. I think everybody is binge watching everything. So the arts is really, really critical. And it's definitely an economic driver, and it's certainly an economic driver in New Jersey. It's also a tool for education. So many, almost every arts organization in the arts portfolio at least has some kind of educational programming for young people. And it's keeping us sane. It's keeping us, it's helping us to heal. The Poetry Festival is coming up soon. We're going to be inspired so much by poetry.
Yeah.
But again, has the sector been equitable in its disbursements of dollars? No, but now we have this moment, as you said. The Mellon Foundation just announced the Black Theater Fund.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ford just announced another national fund as well, supporting BIPOC organizations. Just in Dodge's small way, we're supporting more and more BIPOC-led organizations in our own backyard. And there are other local foundations in New Jersey that are, deeply engaged in this work and really thinking about how they can put resources and support these communities as well. Now, I mean, the interesting thing is that New Jersey doesn't have a lot of private foundations. So in New York, when the pandemic hit, there was a $75 million arts relief fund established right away. They have a lot of large foundations in New York. In New Jersey, we started at the top of the pandemic, the arts funders that we had here, hoping to build an arts fund, which we were able to. We have about $2 million, a little over $2 million raised so far, and the application portal is open. So we're doing what we can. I mean, I certainly couldn't just sit back and not do anything in my role, and working with an incredible steering committee and co-chair from the Grunin Foundation, Jeremy Grunin. We have been on the ground shaking trees trying to get these dollars.
That's right.
Yeah, so there's opportunity. I think our philanthropy is just really looking at how we can get as much resources on the ground. And then, times are uncertain as well. As you know, philanthropy is very tied to the stock market. So we don't know what's going to happen with the market. So we're trying to do what we can while the resources are available.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. We were talking earlier with Fayemi about Black culture and how it influences the world, but yet that Black arts and culture is so underfunded. Can you tell us about the program that you have at Dodge, about the Nonprofit Professionals of Color Collective initiative in a partnership with Rutgers Institute of Ethical Leadership?
Sure. So that actually came out of a number of conversations around just the support that nonprofit professionals, particularly BIPOC nonprofit professionals, need. And I'll say this, when I started my early career as a fundraiser, I was often the only Black person or person of color in any space that I was in, whether it was a conference or convening or whatever. So the notion, and it's growing actually, the number of BIPOC people in the fundraising side, which is great because I didn't have a support system back then, but now there's the African American Development Officers Association. They do an annual conference, networking, just that support system is really critical. And that really was the impetus for the partnership with Rutgers. The Institute has done many, many leadership programs. They know how to do leadership programs. They know what it takes. And to have this conversation around particularly the unique needs of BIPOC people in this space in the nonprofit sector, their expertise was invaluable. And they took it and ran with it. I think they have over a couple hundred maybe participants. And it's a networking space, it's a healing space, it's a learning space, and it's a way for folks to get connected, to get skills, just to get the support sometimes that you need.
And we need that. We need a place that we can go to and speak to people and lean in on different topics that we don't have people to talk to, or afraid to talk about.
Exactly.
But when you're in that space, there's as you told me a no judgment zone, right? So when you have no judgment zone conversations, people are able to, let their guards down and really talk about to get at what's really, important to them.
Exactly.
Well, I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, Sharnita, and I just wanted to just ask you, are there any tips, tools, or mantras, any additional executive development resources or things that you would like to recommend to BIPOC or people of color, women of color that are managing nonprofits and navigating their relationships with foundations?
So, first of all, I can't believe that we're at time. That went really fast. Too fast.
Yeah.
So I would say a couple of things. So there are a lot of, and surprisingly, and I'm very happy to see this, a lot of sort of support mechanisms and circles that have been existing in a lot of new ones. So particularly for folks in philanthropy, ABFE, which is the Association of Black Foundation Executives, they are an organization that supports Black folks in philanthropy, and they do an annual conference. They actually do a women's retreat every year. They did it virtually, actually, in August, I believe. So folks in philanthropy should definitely look into ABFE as a critical resource. On the nonprofit side, definitely the nonprofit Leaders of Color group that Rutgers is, and they have programming almost monthly.
Mm-hmm.
So check out their website. There is also the Arts Administrators of Color, which is I think the group has been around for about a year now, based out of this partnership with the Theater Alliance in New Jersey, and they do monthly programming. And it's also there's a National Arts Administrators of Color network as well. So I would suggest those opportunities. There's also the Nonprofit Association of New Jersey is a place where nonprofit leaders can get a lot of information about the nonprofit sector. It's not particularly geared to BIPOC folks, but it's we're operating in a larger system, so they have lots of resources, and they do an excellent conference annually. I would suggest that people connect up to that as well. And actually, I have some colleagues that have just put together some informal. I would call it a support group. I have some folks that are in this region that put together the Radical Women group, and sometimes we get together and we talk about particular topics. But again, this is just some folks that came together informally. So if what you need is not there, I think it's really important for people to create their own networks as well. I have certainly had people come up to me and ask me, hey, can I just call you like twice a year and just ask you some questions, get some feedback on things? And I've done that myself. Gone to a person and said, look, I might be a little bit too old to be a mentee, but can we have coffee? So I think, there are certainly informal and formal ways for people to come together. And, I'm just really spending time. Dodge had a book club over the summer. And initially I was like, I'm not going to just read anything hard or heavy this summer. I'm just going to just celebrate my Black joy but I wound up reading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. And I think it's such an important book to read. I have in the queue How to Be Anti-Racist by Abram. So some of this we have to do our own education and own organizing as well. But what I will say is I'm extremely encouraged. I meet people almost daily, particularly this next generation of leaders, and it gives me a lot of hope and a lot of excitement. And I feel like, we're probably always going to have a battle to fight, that's for sure. But knowing that we have these leaders and these young people that are so engaged and that are
they're on fire. I love it.
And unafraid. Yes. And gives me a lot. Gives me a lot of hope.
You mentioned the book club. Is that book club on your website that anyone can go look and see what books you guys read? Or was that internal?
That's an excellent question, Anthony. I think we may have posted something over time, but I will definitely check on that. And if not, I'm certain that we can share some of the books that we've been reading. Absolutely.
Yeah. That would be awesome. I just want to let you know that, first of all, I enjoy you professionally and also as a friend. The one thing that I love about you, you're consistent, and I love authentic people. And this conversation went by very fast because we were having a good conversation. But I would love to have you back when we take this podcast from talking via the phone, to it being live in person. When we can get back to, we can do the in-person thing. It will be just a great time to really have additional conversations about what's happening and what's going on. Now, if someone's interested,
well, I'm absolutely here for it.
Now, what if someone's trying to get in touch with you? What can you tell us what your website is? The website or information if they're trying to get in touch with Dodge, or to want to just learn more about
gr.org, or just Google Dodge Foundation New Jersey. It'll pop up, and certainly we update the website. We're on all the social media platforms, so we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We have a Facebook page, so you can always find us there as well.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you, and I hope this is okay.
Well, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I think what you're doing in Lincoln Park is so important, having an art-centric community getting people engaged and understanding that art happens everywhere and that we're all creative and neighborhoods are inherently creative. And I just think that you're doing a great thing over there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thumbs up. I think that, we're working tenaciously to make sure that we shift the ecosystem that's here and using arts as the vehicle to, change the lives of everyone in this community. And as I always say, culture bubbles from the bottom to the top. It's from the hood, it's from the neighborhoods, it's from the streets, and it's every opportunity that we can get to give a voice to the voiceless. It's a very important thing to Lincoln Park, and actually that's what brings me joy. I'm a native Newarker, so it brings me joy to be able to just, I could be working somewhere else, but it's nice that I am part of the change and a change agent, and it's having partners like you that allows us to do what we do. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
So I'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow. What a great conversation with Sharnita Johnson. She left us with some really, really three important things that I gleaned to really think about. One, the arts is definitely an economic driver in New Jersey. I'm excited about that because I'm part of that economic driving here in the city of Newark. Two, the arts are helping us to heal. I mean, through this pandemic, I've listened to so much music. I've been, as creative as I can so that I cannot fall into a space of despair. And three, that Dodge has doubled down on its commitment to anti-racism for the long haul. That is so awesome. I was so happy to have had the opportunity to chat with Sharnita about so many important things that's going on with her and her organization. I want to thank my guest today, Fayemi Shakur, Arts and Cultural Affairs Director for the City of Newark, and Sharnita C. Johnson, Program Director for the Arts at the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. I want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes by Audre Lorde. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. Be sure to catch our next episode dropping on November 13th. Thank you for listening to the Lincoln Park Sustainable Living Community Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Smith, the Executive Director of Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District.